Hello, today I'll be showing you guys how to make a scrunchie. Now you can do this by hand with a needle and thread, but I personally find it really easy and faster and just makes a more secure scrunchie if you use a sewing machine. So that's what I'm going to be using today. Now onto the things you'll need. Obviously some fabric. You can use anything. You could even use an old pillowcase or an old sheet you don't need anymore. You need very little fabric. This is all you will need. So anything lying around that you're okay with cutting up, you can use. Also, some elastic. This is a 1/2 inch thick elastic. It's kind of a little too bulky for me, but it works. Or you could even use a hair tie like this and then just cut it so you're left with a long piece of elastic. Next, you'll need some pins just to pin your fabric together. They're not mandatory. I just kind of find that it's a little easier to run through my machine when I have my fabric pinned. Then you're going to need a safety pin. Again, you don't really need it. It just makes the process a little easier. So a measuring tape or ruler, anything to measure your fabric and elastic with. And that's pretty much it. So the first thing you want to do is cut your fabric how you want it. Now the length I use is 20 inches and the width is 4. With the length, I will change it up from time to time depending on if I want a smaller scrunchie or a larger scrunchie. So with a smaller one, I'll make it probably around 10 or 14 inches long. A longer one, 20, 24 inches long. And the width I always keep the same because I find 4 inches is pretty standard and I've never had any problems with 4 inches. Now, what you want to do first with your fabric is fold it together, right sides together, long ways like this. And what right sides together means is that every single piece of fabric has a right and a wrong side. I'll show you with this one because it's a little easier to see. So with this, the right side is a lot more saturated. It's really dark in color. But then if you turn it around, the colors become very dull and almost faded. So this is the right and then wrong. It's a lot duller on the wrong side. And every single piece of fabric has that. With this one, it's just a little harder to see. The right side is kind of a lot more shiny and then the back is a little dull. So you're going to want to take right sides together and just fold it together lengthwise like this. And then from here, you want to pin along this line if you do choose to pin. Now I don't put a bunch in because they're kind of annoying to take out when you are sewing. So I'll just put one in towards the front, in the middle, and then down at the end. And if I am working with like a cotton material, instead of pinning, I will just iron along this line so that it kind of holds its shape down while I am sewing it. So I won't always use pins, but if I do, I'll just use a little bit. I use 3 to hold together this right here, and then I'll just sew down this line, a simple, really easy straight stitch. So I'll do that right now. And again, you can do this by hand. It'll just probably take a little longer. So I'll just sew it right now. Taking out the pins as I go. So then I'll cut off the excess thread that I have. And I'm left with this tube-like piece of fabric right here. So then with my elastic, I'll take it and I use probably around 7 inches maybe of elastic, but sometimes I'll just measure the length of like around my wrist because it's comfortable for me and I wear my scrunchies on my wrist. So sometimes I'll just do that, or I'll just take 7 inches, maybe 8, depending on how long the scrunchie is how long I will cut my elastic. So I have it just a little bit longer than my wrist. And then the safety pin again. you're gonna take your tube, and how it has like like a mouth kind of, it has two little sides right here. You are going to pin one side like this, and then you're going to work the safety pin inside. So it's kind of hidden, but it's inside right here. And you are just going to push the safety pin through the tube. And what we're doing is turning the scrunchie, turning this tube inside out so that the pretty side is facing us, and so that this seam right here is hidden. So just push your safety pin through, and you will see that it'll start bunching up like this, and you just tug on it, and that's how you know that it is working. So then I'm gonna finish up pulling the safety pin through, and then you'll see it's gonna come out on the other end, and then you're just gonna pull carefully, and then your fabric is turned inside out. And then the seam is hidden, and you're left with this. So then no frays are seen. So you have your tube, right side sticking out, and then you're gonna grab your elastic, the size of your wrist, or cut to 7-8 inches, and you are going to pin one side of the elastic with your safety pin, like this. And then the same thing with turning the tube inside out. You're just gonna feed this pin inside like this. So you're gonna feed the elastic through the tube. It takes a little minute to get it through. And then you're gonna wanna, this is important, you're gonna wanna make sure you are holding on to this end while you are pulling through the safety pin that's attached to the other end of the elastic. Because if you do not, then you're just gonna pull the elastic through the end of the tube. So you can either safety pin it or just hold it. I'm just gonna hold it and then feed the elastic through the inside of the tube. So same thing when you're turning it inside out, make sure you're holding on to the end. So when it comes out, you have two pieces of elastic. So unpin the end of the elastic, and then pull these through, and you can either choose to tie these two into a knot or sew it down in your machine or by hand. I'm gonna do by hand because I'm gonna use my machine to sew it because I don't really like the knot that it creates when I do tie it. So I'm just gonna sew down really quickly. All right. And then I have this. I have my two pieces sewed together, and I'm gonna tuck it back into the tube, into the scrunchie essentially. And then how I have these open frayed edges, I'm just gonna tuck those into each other so that they stay hidden. So once you're done tucking, you're basically done, and all you have to do is sew down the middle so that the elastic stays inside and you can have your finished product. So all I did, as you can see, I tucked in those frayed edges so they're not visible anymore, and I'm gonna sew right here. I used to hand sew this seam closed, but it takes a while and it's kind of confusing to sew it. So I'm just gonna use my machine to sew down that line to secure everything in. And then once you have that done, you have finished the scrunchie. So I'm just gonna cut off these extra threads. And there you have it, a scrunchie. This one is a little bigger than I would like it, so I would just either cut the size down or use a shorter piece of elastic. So yep, there's the scrunchie. Thank you for watching. I hope you can make your own.